I have with me Australian middle to longer distance runner Madeline Hills. So Mad's best events are steeplechase, 5K, 10K, and really interesting story with previously running internationally as a junior athlete and then having an 8-year hiatus doing pharmacy and I guess enjoying life as a normal person. And then coming back in, was it 2014?
Yes.
2014. Yep. And since then, having competed at fourth Com Games at 2014 Com Games and 2 times finalist at the Rio Olympics as well. So pretty impressive return in that short time span. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm more than happy.
Now, I'm sure many athletes are keen to hear your thoughts on food and nutrition and performance and that sort of thing. But I guess the main purpose of these interviews as well is to shine a bit of light and insights into the insane rates of disorder-type eating patterns and eating disorders that we do have, particularly in athletics. But, you know, it's across the board really at the moment in sport in general. So, you know, many people would sort of look at your small frame and perhaps question whether it's something that you've ever battled with personally. Is it something you've battled with or, you know, seen in those around you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and certainly my frame has meant that I feel like this is a discussion that sometimes people tippy-toe around with me. I've always been long and lean, and I guess, you know, people certainly make that question or assume that I'm someone who doesn't have any issues with my body and my shape and all those sorts of things. I don't feel like I've ever had, you know, an eating disorder. Having said that, I do think that at times myself and probably the majority of athletes have had some factors of disordered eating. Yeah. And whether that's as simple as seeing a food and identifying as good or bad, which is something that I think is really normalised in sport, or, you know, whether it's more severe. I think for me, you know, I've definitely had those moments where I've had to question, hang on, no, I should be able to have whatever that treat is and not really call it a treat or not call it a cheat meal or anything, just it's part of my normal natural diet. Yeah. So it's something that absolutely you see in the sport, and it's not as easy as seeing someone's frame and knowing there's something wrong or not. And I guess that's probably one of the main things. You know, someone sees a skinny, seems to be girl, but of course males have the same problem. People seem to think it's only goes on in the female population, but see someone who's skinny and say, oh, they must have a problem, and they see someone who's a stockier build naturally and says, oh, they don't have a problem. And I think, you know, there's a massive overlap.
Oh yeah.
So I guess I feel like disordered eating and unhealthy habits are probably normalised far too much in our sport. And it's something I, you know, am aware of and really, really interested in, and certainly want to, you know, I guess share my experiences, which I think are a pretty balanced, you know, sort of view on food and nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good point that men do also suffer from this, and
no, it's only, you know, if you listen to coaches and athletes, you know, they sort of seem to think that the guys don't have a problem, it's a girl's problem. And it's not, you know, I think in sport and young, you know, young people going through puberty, you know, body shapes are different. You sort of look on social media, you see what a beautiful girl is meant to look like or a handsome boy is meant to look like, and then, you know, you add that into what a successful athlete looks like, and it becomes a really blurred picture of sort of how you're meant to be.
Yeah, I think particularly with the rise of these wellness models on Instagram and that sort of thing, a lot of the time athletes aren't perhaps looking for the right role models anymore, and that has certainly, I think, contributed to that picture.
Absolutely. And in terms of my experiences with it, you know, I do feel like I've had a pretty healthy perception of what I need to have. But I do have an interesting experience. I remember before the Olympics, I'd sort of started to have, you know, a weight that I thought was my race weight. And what is race weight? It's a number I plucked from air that, you know, I seemed to sit at relatively comfortably, but that was sort of the weight I thought I should be. And I remember a few weeks before Rio, I'd spent some time in the UK and jumped on the scales at the physios, and I was, you know, a kilo and a bit above what I thought I should be. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, you know, what do I do now? Oh, well, it's too late. I'm just, you know, I'm not going to starve myself in the last 2 weeks. They're really important. And I ended up, you know, running really well at the Olympics and running 2 PBs and without doubt running the best races of my life. And it was a really good wake-up call for me that the number was so meaningless.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an indicator of whether I was ready to run fast or that I was fit or anything like that. You know, it's all about the work you do and fueling yourself well enough to be able to do the work. That was more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another interesting comment on that is that a lot of the time you'll see an athlete's profile will list their weight.
Yeah.
And I think that's so damaging to a degree because we all have such different frames. You know, like someone like yourself, for example, is naturally quite petite. Your weight is naturally going to sit a lot lower than perhaps someone else at the same height.
Yeah.
So, you know, for young athletes in particular, looking at those figures, I wonder sometimes whether that is also contributing to the picture.
Definitely. I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know where they get that number from. I don't remember ever writing down, I think on my Wikipedia page there's a weight. I don't remember giving whoever writes Wikipedia my weight. I think it's probably something they've, you know, taken from when I was a junior, and maybe I weighed that in 2006, and to be completely honest, I don't know what I weigh now. I don't know any scales because I really have started to learn that I can tell when I'm feeling right and where I'm at, and the number is meaningless. I do think that the height and weight is one area. I also think that social media has some fantastic avenues to have a positive message.
Yeah.
But I do think as well, being an athlete with the potential to be influencing young athletes, it's important to make sure you're sharing healthy photos, experiences with food and exercise. And I think, again, that sort of conversation of good food and athlete food and being dedicated is a little muddy. I don't think every athlete should, you know, what are the fads at the moment? Be eating a plant-based, vegan, well, that's the same, but gluten-free, dairy-free diet, unless that's right for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, you know, if you're someone who can have everything, you should certainly project that that's what you have in a healthy, balanced quantity.
Yeah, definitely. I love that aspect. Now, you've recently gone through a big injury, so multiple hamstring tendinopathy. So that whole period, obviously, very different training, if any, to what you normally do.
Yeah.
Has your eating behaviours changed at all during that time?
They have, and they've actually changed in a different way than I expected. So yeah, I've had both legs operated on at the same time, which did mean sort of 3 months certainly away from running, and really much more of a focus on recovery than training. So I started to, I still really am in the place of calling myself more just someone who's out exercising and being healthy than an athlete. I'm starting to transition back, which is a very welcome situation to be in. I probably thought I'd struggle a little bit more with it than I have. I have sort of thought, oh, you're not going to be able to train, your body composition's going to change, you're going to look different, you're going to, identify the way that you feel, you previously have. And I really don't think I've gone through that as much as I expected. I've had some really good influences around me. I've got a couple of friends who are dietitians who have really encouraged the fueling for recovery sort of approach. And I've really embraced that. So has my eating changed? It has. I don't have a post-session fuel to have to go and have because I haven't really had many sessions. Yeah. But I've happily embraced my body changing. I've eaten when I want to. I've, certainly explored some new cooking recipes and, gone to a few restaurants and indulged, say, on a Friday night where I may not have previously because I had a training session the Saturday. So I guess that's the biggest change is I'm sort of not worrying how things sit in my stomach.
Yeah.
But no, I really think it's important. I've had major surgery on both of my legs. That takes a lot of energy for my body to recover from, and I'm more than happy to give it the fuel it needs in order to do that.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
I've certainly noticed from my time spent at tracks and whatnot that a lot of people do start to have issues after an injury because their body does naturally change.
Yeah.
So it is a really good example that you've been able to actually nourish your body during that time and not be so hung up about the number, because when you do start to worry, often that's when issues really start to...
Yeah, and look, and like I said, you know, I don't have scales, and I'm sure if I was jumping on them every week and seeing the number come, you know, increase, maybe that would make me feel sad, I don't know, but I've just not put myself in that situation. Again, I think it makes sense that my body should be a little bit different when I'm not doing the incredibly intense training I'm normally doing. And sure, you know, my body will change again when I go back to training and having a bit more of a focus on the timing of when I'm eating and those sorts of things. But it's not something I'm rushing towards. It's not something I consciously want to change. I think it'll just happen, you know, as I get back into working hard again. Yeah,
good. Now, you're also a qualified pharmacist. Do you think there's anything as health professionals, or perhaps people who are watching this that may be coaches or parents or athletes themselves, that we can be doing or saying differently that could, I guess, you know, help reduce the rates of disordered eating patterns in sport?
Yeah, I think it's more complex than simply what the person's putting in their body. And I think that's where, you know, nutritionists and dietitians have such a big role, obviously, in giving the information of what needs to go in and when, and, you know, to feel well. But and again, I'm learning this a lot from some of my friends. But the emotional side of what people are eating is really important as well. And obviously that can be a psychologist, also can be a dietitian, but that can be coach, that can be training partners, loved ones, and sometimes it's really little comments that actually are wrong, that people say, not meaning to be harmful. Things like, you know, seeing a girl who's the leanest they've ever been and saying, gee, she's fit. I remember I got gastro a few weeks before Com Games and I lost so much weight I couldn't run. And, you know, a few people said that to me and I said, actually, I haven't run for a week. I haven't been able to do anything. I'm sick. You know, I'm really underweight. You know, there's so many reasons someone's skinny and they're not always healthy, and it doesn't mean they've been working hard. And I think on the reverse, you know, making little comments that oh, you'll get back in shape soon, they're not helpful comments. I do think the space is changing. I think increasingly you are seeing, particularly female distance runners, are starting to come in all shapes and sizes and have great success. And I feel that actually our Rio team in my event, the steeplechase, was such a good example of 3 different body shapes. We had me who's tall and limmy. We had one athlete who's very, very petite, as little, you know, much shorter, and then we had a beautiful girl who's strong and a different build, and all 3 of us performed incredibly well. And so I do think it's a great example for a young athlete to look up and say, oh, hang on, that girl looks like me. She's similar to me, and she's had great success. And, you know, I don't think it's just the one long-limbed, you know, potentially me sort of build that is you know, is equaling success anymore. It's far more important to see that there's a diverse range of build. Yeah, absolutely. I think the interesting thing that's coming out of all of these interviews is that when you focus on your own individualised, I guess, health and performance, that's when things really start to come together. Yeah, and I think as well, you know, you can make little tiny changes to yourself, but my body shape has never been one that's going to have a 6-pack. I probably never tried very hard to have one, but I still don't think I could. There's no point in me longing for, you know, what someone else has. I probably don't need that to run very fast anyway. So it's about just trying to improve yourself and do the best that you can. Yeah, it's interesting as a nutritionist, most of the women that come through my doors in sport want to lose weight, which blows my mind a lot of the time because that shouldn't be a priority. But the men that come through, the number one thing they want to... I'd like one too, but I probably don't quite have the discipline to do that, but no, that's okay. It's quite interesting, but Now, let's talk about food a bit more generally. You're obviously quite passionate about food, and I love how much you put on Instagram and stuff of all of your feasts and stuff like that. Is there a staple dish that you like to cook at the moment? Not really a staple. I think I have a pretty broad range of what I cook, and certainly over the last few months that really became my hobby. I remember on, you know, a night that I'd normally be out training thinking, oh my gosh, I've got 3 spare hours and I'm going to cook up a feast, and my husband would come home from work and there'd be 10 different things in front of him, and, you know, we really went to town. I guess at the moment, getting, you know, a bit chillier in the winter, we've been doing a lot of slow cooker meats. So we did a beautiful Greek slow cooked lamb shoulder the other day. But really just exploring like different cuts of meats and different ways to cook them, and there's really nothing that's off limits. I'll try most things.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Any particular recovery meal? I know things are a little bit different at the moment, but it can even be as a, healing from an injury type recovery meal.
Yeah, that's something that took me a little while to really be disciplined to do. I think in the early years of my return to run, I'd be inclined to finish the run and think, oh, it wasn't that hard, I'm having brunch in an hour and a half, I'll wait till then. And I definitely missed that refuel window. Probably the last 3 years I've been quite disciplined with it, and I am someone who doesn't really want to sit down to a meal straight after a run, so I do the protein shake. I've been using Science and Sport products for a couple of years. I genuinely like the taste of them. I make a little concoction of some whey protein and they've got a product that has a bit of protein, bit of carbs in there. And I just mix that up with whatever's around. If it happens to be milk, it's milk. If it's water, it's water. I definitely do that. And I do that after anything longer than just a 30-minute run. Yeah, okay. Do it after gym, do it after a 40-minute run even, and certainly after a session.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Makes the hangry a little bit less likely as well.
Yeah, nice. That's always important.
I'm a nicer human for it.
Love it. Any other supplements that you would utilise?
No. I guess I've had times where my iron's been a little low. I've never been anemic, but just lower than what my physiologist would like for a distance runner. So I do take iron supplements at times. Don't love them in terms of how they sit in my stomach, but that's pros and cons of it. No, I don't take any other supplements.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm all for food as medicine where possible.
Yeah, and I like food, so I would much prefer to get to eat another meal than to have to in the tablet.
Nice. Now, anything pre-race when you are in training, in competition phase, that you sort of have to do or have to eat pre-race?
No, I do get quite a nervous stomach before races, and so getting that right has taken a little bit of time. I don't really have a specific thing I would have. I'd have more things that I avoid. So I would, your obvious things like your beans and your, broccoli and cauliflower type salads I would never have beforehand, but I've got no problem with gluten or anything like that before a race. I guess my go-to an hour and a half or so before would be just some rice cakes with peanut butter and honey. Banana, provided it's not too green, maybe 2 hours before. And then, a sandwich or whatever 3 to 4 hours before.
Yeah, nice and simple. Good.
Very simple, and it has to be because otherwise I think you get a bit stressed when you can't find what you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Now, really important question. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only eat 3 foods, what would they be?
Cheese.
Yeah.
Like a platter. Not I can't pick one. Cheese platter. Yogurt. And roasted nuts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So
salted roasted nuts. Pretty much a platter. With a bowl of yogurt.
Interesting combo, but nice. And just to finish off, is there anything you wish you knew, I guess, either as a junior athlete or perhaps if you think your journey has been quite a good one, is there anything that you could pass on as wisdom to any junior athletes coming through now?
Yeah, I just think it's far better to have a bit too much than a little bit too little.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something that many people get wrong. And I don't know, I've had injuries. I don't know if it's a result of fueling. I've never had a stress fracture, which is something I'm really grateful for. I've had a few little hot spots, but never had a fracture. I like to think that's because I fueled myself pretty well. And the soft tissue thing's just a result of pushing myself too hard in training. But I think having a little bit more is better than a little bit less. I think increasingly you see athletes who have long careers as a result of fueling themselves really well. And for myself, I feel like I always did have that little bit more, but I guess my advice, to me would be to not feel guilty for it. I do feel like I've always taken on what I needed, but I think the general feel sometimes in athletics is that you probably shouldn't be having that extra little bit. And my advice, would be to have that bowl of ice cream if you want to have it at the end of the week, not just because you've had a good track session or whatever, just because you're probably can have it, you can have it.
Yeah.
And you deserve it and you enjoy it. Food's meant to be enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you. That's
No
really
worries.
good.